It was an animal attack, spin-off episode selected.
I just remembered we don't have an intro for this one because it's a spin-off.
Welcome to the expanded universe of the Vampire Diaries. There's an Irish vampire named Remick. He's one of Klaus's wayward proteges.
Are there any Irish vampires in the Vampire Diaries universe? Well, first of all, for those of you who are listening and don't usually listen to this podcast, our voices are somewhat similar. I'm Sandile.
And I'm Fadzai.
Are there Irish vampires in the TVD universe? Because there is one in Buffy, of course. We have Angelus.
Birth name Liam. Very Irish name. No, I can't think of...
Can't think of one?
I mean, if there was, it'd be like a canon thing, because you know TVD doesn't really bother with accents.
Yeah.
Unlike True Blood, which really tries, and Buffy, which tries and fails.
Ooh. Yeah, we don't usually plan these in advance, but we're here to talk about double bill of some vampire movies because we talk about vampires here. I mean, we talk about supernatural stuff in general, but vampire movies in the last couple months. Was Nosferatu also this year?
No, Nosferatu
It's 2024,
was last year.
the movie. But when did we watch it?
We watched it last year, Nosferatu.
Did we watch it last year?
Yeah.
Damn. Time flies, man. It honestly feels like...
We're halfway through the year. Someone on TikTok pointed out that we are closer to 2050 than we are to the year 2000. And I was like, leave me alone with your facts and your science.
Didn't need to know that at all, especially today when I'm feeling my age. There's a fatigue that lives in me. This cold is getting to my bones. Like, I have to be somewhere this evening and I'm truly considering just like staying in and wrapping myself in a blanket like a burrito. But, okay, so within the last year, I guess, we've seen two vampire movies, two very iconic ones for different reasons. That's Nosferatu and Sinners. And we're gonna be starting with Nosferatu because that one is further away and I had to rewatch it to remember a lot of my thoughts on it. So here we are.
And it came out first, so I guess fair is fair.
Yeah, like I just said, I guess, we did go and watch Nosferatu last year. A mutual friend and I actually coordinated for a group of us to go see it. It was a group of our friends, Fadzai, and a couple of other friends that they have that I think we met that day. So that was.
Oh, you had never met them before either? That makes me feel better.
No. I'd not met one, two, three. Yeah, three of them I'd not met except through social media. So that was the first time in real life. So that was fun. We did miss like the first 5 or 10 minutes.
I did watch it more than once last year, so...
Oh, I see. Well, that's great for you. Thursday evening was the first time I've seen the first 10 minutes of Nosferatu 2024. And honestly, game changer. Completely shifted how I view that whole movie. Who would have thought seeing the whole thing is instrumental to, like, understanding it?
You know, and I try to tell people this when I've argued with certain friends and certain strangers online who are like, ugh, I just hated that series. I stopped at episode 1, and I'm like, that's fine if you didn't like episode 1, but you can't say you hated the series. You didn't experience the whole show, so how would you know?
With the series, I always say give it 5 episodes. If they can't hook you in 5 episodes, it's probably just not for you. I would also say less a measure of the quality overall, because that's tough to do unless it's like egregiously bad, which is certainly not unthinkable.
Yeah. And I mean, I've watched stuff that like is old, but I'm like, if I had given up in the beginning, I don't know that if I had started watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer now in the modern age and started with season 1, that I would have necessarily been hooked.
Fair.
I might have been like, eh.
I mean, as someone who did start it now in the modern era, I was hooked. So I will say, I mean, I was advised to watch it by friends whose opinions I treasure, so maybe that influenced my bias.
It definitely gets
but
better.
I thought it was fun.
Season 1 is a lot of people's, like, it's one of the most highly rated seasons, but it's never number 1.
For sure. It's the shortest one.
Significantly.
It's really like of the week, like all over the place. They haven't like figured it out yet.
Some of the monster metaphors for growing up are a little bit heavy-handed or just miss the mark completely.
Not that goes away, I'd say, but that's, beside the point. But yeah, we went to watch Nosferatu. I remember thinking, even when we watched it in the cinema, I was like, this is a beautiful movie. I'm not sure how I feel about it in like my critical mind, but I know I left the cinema being like, yeah, yeah, I liked that. And I think I gave it like a 3 or 3.5 on Letterboxd, which I am on Letterboxd. Follow me there. Fun times.
Ooh.
But when I rewatched it now, I was like, I think it reaffirmed some of my earlier opinions, and there was stuff that I came to appreciate that I didn't in the cinematic viewing, which is interesting. I guess that raises a question about like watching something in your own home and watching it in a cinema of people. Although there were definitely bits watching it in cinema that it was good to get the reaction.
One of the people we watched it with left and was like, that was so bad. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That's one of the things that threw me. I was like, wait, was my head empty as I was watching it? Because I didn't think it was bad.
I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of taste. Like if I listen to death metal or whatever genre that is, all I hear is screaming and it hurts me. But that's because it's not my thing. Other people can appreciate the art and the music and the talent that goes into being able to perform in that way. And I can respect that.
And I came into this call before we started recording very quietly singing a Screamo song. So that really does show you the dichotomy of man. Immediate thoughts, I think the movie excels the most with atmosphere. I think the way that this thing is shot, the sets, the lighting, the framing, all of that is just really gorgeous and moody. It's like a gothic horror, so like it's capturing that vibe so well. And I think the thing I appreciated most about it is the way that it plays with reality and time and perception. There's a lot of shots that are composed together that naturalistically don't make sense, but flow so well that you're like losing yourself as well, the way the main character in that scene is losing themselves. And I found that chillingly beautiful. It's nice. I think Robert Edges, who's the guy who wrote, well, I don't know if he wrote the full script, but definitely like wrote the story and directed, is like very big on that. Have you seen The VVitch?
No, I love that you always call it that.
Every time. Because if I say The Witch, I could be
VVitch.
talking about anything. If I say The VVitch, you know the movie I'm talking about.
I have not seen The VVitch. I want to. I wasn't really aware of its existence until after we watched Nosferatu and you and our friends brought it up. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go see that at some point.
I really think you should. I really enjoyed The VVitch. It's like Salem witch trials time. It's what were those people called? That era of like American colonialism? Puritans, yes. But yeah, that was also a really good one. He loves a period piece, I found. I think the 4 movies he's done so far have all been period pieces.
And in case anyone listening, I don't know how you wouldn't know this, but in case, you never know, I've been surprised before. Nosferatu 2024 is a remake of the very famous 1922 film, Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, which was how do we say?
A rip-off.
A rip-off of the Dracula novel that had itself not yet been made into a film. They got into a lot of trouble with Dracula's widow, the original film, who was like, anybody who watches this and knows of my husband's work can see the obvious similarities. Like many of the characters match up perfectly with the characters in Dracula.
I did not realize how perfectly that they matched up until I
really
watched
do.
this movie. I was like, wow, that's just shot for shot, word for word. The
Bar for
story.
bar.
Like I really didn't think about, oh yeah, Mina Harker was like also extrasensory, like telepathic psychic shit was going on. I was like, oh wow.
She was.
Okay.
I mean, in her case, it's ironic because, well, I guess in this movie, the Mina Harker equivalent inadvertently reaches out to the titular vampire, and then he accepts that connection, which ultimately ends up being his undoing. But in Dracula, Mina's connection with her is purely because Dracula was dumb enough to feed off of her and then feed her his blood, but not turn her immediately.
Yes.
Which allows that connection to be built, which she then uses against him and helps her friends kill him.
Which, that is something maybe appreciate's not the right word. I'm interested by is how much this Nosferatu versus the original Nosferatu and versus Dracula centers the like female character in that trio of characters that is always sort of raised up in the Dracula story. Or I guess quartet, including the Dracula figure, because it's the Van Helsing character who is already well versed with the supernatural. Jonathan Harker?
Yeah, Jonathan
I always
Harker.
forget the Dracula characters. Who is the man of letters, the working man, who is at odds with the Dracula. He is the underdog hero. And then his wife, who is victimized.
Mina Harker, named Murray. Are they married in the story already, or are they just engaged? I can never remember.
Well, this is the thing, is that I only know Dracula osmotically, which is a crying shame based on the work that we do. You know Dracula a lot better than I do.
There's been so many adaptations that I must also admit I've forgotten a bit. I do know that in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen,
That's the one I know.
In the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the comics, Mina is known as Mina Murray because she has since divorced Jonathan and has gone back to her maiden name. And I don't think they created that maiden name. So I assume at some point in the original novel, she is referred to as Mina Murray. In the film version, which I know we love, she is still Mina Harker. I think she's just widowed.
Yeah, she's widowed, not divorced. It's like, oh, my husband died. Also, I am the vampire, which I love. Again, like, I love a story that takes that character and is like, actually, she's center stage, for better or worse. So I find that interesting about this one. Oh, also the 1922 Nosferatu is a silent film. So that was also an interesting... It's available for free because I think it's in the public domain now, at least in the States. And so it's on Wikipedia, just the whole hour and a half or so is just in that little video window that's the thumbnail for the Nosferatu page. So if you want to go see that, lovely little silent film in German that's also translated into English.
Also, famously, the first time that vampires burned in the sun.
Wow, define the genre.
Yeah, so I mean, at least they tried to be different because Dracula is just ultimately, I think, staked and beheaded. They were like, our vampire is going to burn in the sunlight because there is already folklore about them being nocturnal. It's such a funny thing to consider. Like, imagine like years from now when some living animal is extinct and has fallen into like legend, and it's like, oh yeah, if you take a lion into direct sunlight, it'll burst into flames. And it's like, well, no. I don't know if lions are nocturnal. I know they sometimes hunt at night. That might be a bad example. But I don't know, a bat or something that usually only comes out when the sun is down. And it's like, no, vampires were not meant to be weakened by the sun.
They just didn't hang out in that time, you know? They were asleep. They needed their REM.
Dracula in the novel has fewer powers during the daylight. He can't shapeshift. I think that's mainly it. He can't shapeshift, but he still has his super strength. He can still feed. And, you know, you might as well sleep during the time of day when you're at your weakest.
Right.
So he goes to bed, but the sun doesn't actually hurt him.
It's like, why am I going to go out for the smoke when I'm not at my best? I'm just going to live the lavish. I'm going to get my 8 hours, put my little cucumbers under my eyes. Don't worry about it.
And in Nosferatu, they were like, what if he became the smoke when he went out?
Which I love. I especially love that also made its way to Strahd and because of Strahd, the vampiric character, and like the 5e D&D of it all, which is very much playing with all of this nonsense. So that's great. But yeah, the thing I was gonna say also about Nosferatu 2024 versus The VVitch, I'm gonna say it every time. There's a theme of repression that's going on in both of those movies. No spoilers for The VVitch, but it's like 1600s, you know, puritanical colony. But here it's like 1800s Victorian society, polite, you know, gentlemen and women of high standing, that sort of thing. There's like a repression element that runs through this. But there's also in both movies this like, not very, but there's a slight interest in the taboo, social taboos of the now and also of the time. And in this one, it's there's like a hot second of like implied necrophilia in the like back half of the movie that's like, woo, that's kind of wild. And the thing about it, this is with what's ATJ's character's name? I wrote it down. Friedrich, Mr. Rich Laugh. God, I hate that character. But yeah, towards the end, once all his family's dead, obviously spoilers for this movie if you're listening to this, and he's now dying of, I think, the actual plague, not anything Nosferatu did to him. And then they find him having opened the coffin, and we saw him holding his wife in that last moment to do a face-to-face, but when they find him, she's splayed out in the coffin, and he is sort of straddled across her, and they don't hold on it for too long, so it's not like very explicated, but the implication there is like just an attempt at the very least at necrophilia, which ties into some shit he said earlier about his wife. And the like gothic horror of it all, and I did see a number of people on Twitter being like, oh, you know, the love and desire in the gothic genre persisting even beyond death, even that could not hold him back from the love of his wife. And it's like, okay, but also when we're talking about the themes in this movie that are surrounding the women and specifically surrounding Anna in this movie, it feels more about the endless objectification of women even beyond death. And there's some stuff that happens in very real life that still happens to this day that I won't mention because this is not the forum. And that's kind of where my mind went with it. And I'm not sure if that was the intention by Mr. Edges himself, but it's interesting.
I mean, even if it wasn't the intention, I'm like, the way that it's presented in the final cut, there's no way that someone watching back their own work didn't think, oh, this kind of looks like... Well,
you'd be surprised. I wouldn't say that of this director. He's everywhere because I looked him up a bit this week because I was like, I need to watch those other two movies too. I kept meaning to. They stress that he's a director who's very much attention to detail. So I doubt he specifically, but in general, artists of a certain variety, of which he is that variety, you'd be surprised what they miss because of their own perspective being the dominant perspective in media.
Well, that's why you get yourself a sounding board.
Exactly. Ellen, love Ellen. Ellen Hutter, which is an interesting surname. We are in Germany, pre-Germany, but apparently Germans still refer to themselves as Germans at the time.
Ellen Hutter, no relation to Mrs. Harker.
No relation at all. I promise. No, any similarity to figures, fictional or real, completely coincidental.
But like, no, these people are German, and the protagonists of Dracula are English and Dutch, in the case of Van Helsing.
Obsessed with all the English accents. It's my favorite. I know that some criticisms were made of Miss Rose Depp's performance. I've not personally seen her in anything other than this. I only knew of her before that through her abominable father, through...
I will say her surname is just Depp, not Rose Depp. Her name is Lily-Rose.
Is she Lily-Rose Depp? She's not Lily-Rose Depp?
She's Lily-Rose, like Rebecca Diane.
Oh, like Beck's Di. Interesting. Okay.
Your fave.
Miss Depp? Oh, that's unfortunate for her. I was trying to give her some space. But yeah, also that The Weeknd show that I obviously would have no interest in. And then a meme that was circling recently because she has a partner named it's got something to do with Shake in the name. I can't remember the name specifically. They're a queer couple, which love that. It was someone on TikTok recounting them encountering the two of them in the wild, and they were clearly a fan of Lily-Rose's partner, and they were like, oh, they were so kind, so nice, or whatever. The big-headed bitch on the right.
Oh, right.
It became this copy pasta that kept spinning out, and I really enjoyed that. But regardless of her like dramatic or emotional performances, because I do think in some places it was like, ooh, I think her physical performance is maybe the most impressive thing in this movie. The stuff that she does with her body in this movie is so distressing.
Yeah.
And it's something I would not expect of an actor, and that's my own bias, of an actor who looks like her and vibes like her. I was very impressed by the shit she gets done in this movie.
Yeah, she looks like she is sickly and seizing, but because of the sexual undertones and overtones of this film, sometimes it's a combination of that and like this sort of orgasmic physicality. And it's like, okay. We see what you're going for.
Girl, should I leave? Are you in trouble or do you need privacy? I cannot tell. But yeah, Ellen fascinates because she's this like, and because of my limited knowledge of the original Dracula tale, she's this like Cassandra-esque figure, Cassandra of Greek myth, who had these powers of foresight, but she was cursed to never be believed, which I knew just that part of Cassandra, looked up Cassandra recently. In myth, she's tied to, obviously, Apollo, because we always joke about Apollo providing the gift of foresight, and now I've connected those two. He's the one who gave her these powers, but it's because he was romantically pursuing Cassandra, and then tales vary, but either she rebuffed him, or there was a promise of marriage that she made that she then broke, and that's when he cursed her, one of the two. And I was just so fascinated by how that paralleled this thing with Ellen and Nosferatu. I was like, that's a lot of things like stacking up here. That's so interesting. She is right the whole time and is never believed because she's a woman in 1838 whose husband is absent, and she's acting in ways that are unbecoming of a woman of her standing and of her time. She's also ignored by her husband in a lot of ways, a husband who does love her. Dear Thomas. Oh, Nicholas Hoult. What's the thing the kids say? If I met you in Papa's orchard, we would pick apples. Whatever.
I've never heard that one, but okay.
Because there's levels to like encountering an actor who you appreciate, and the typical level at the time was, well, I am physically and sexually interested in you now that I've seen your performance. And then there was the second one that came in that was like, I don't think I've got that for you, but I have come to appreciate you as a friend I would have known in childhood, picking apples in Papa's orchard. Have you not seen that?
I haven't seen that.
So that's the vibe I've got with Mr. Hoult. He is so focused on this ideal of like success and providence, and he insists it's for the betterment of her happiness, even though at every point she's saying, I don't give a shit about all that stuff. I just want you here with me, my husband. We are in love. We are married. And he's like, no, I'm gonna go off to Bohemia and go meet some old man so we can get a bunch of money so I can be as rich as my friend ATJ, I guess.
I don't know, because her counterpart in Dracula is pretty fine with her husband taking this business trip, as far as I can remember. Whereas when he leaves Ellen, she's already like, oh, I'm in distress. I've been having a terrible nightmare. Don't go. And I don't think we're at the level where it seems like she's physically ill yet. But it is like, I don't know how mentally well your wife is doing right now. Do we need to take this business trip?
You know, that's gonna be weeks on end.
A little bit, it does feel as though his boss is like, we have to do this. The eccentric rich man in the East has specifically requested you. You better go.
Thank you for bringing him up, because HERR, obsessed. The first thing I said when I stepped out of that cinema, a freak start to finish, having the most fun in that movie, serving the devil, killing the game at serving the devil, right? Nobody could touch that man. Chomped down on that pigeon that he had in that cell, and then gave a dramatic monologue. Chomped down on that guard's neck when he was trying to help him, and then ran through the rain to go welcome his master at the docks, rode his coffin down the canal with like absolute glee, and then died at the end for him. Icon.
Eat your heart out, Renfield.
I've never seen a Renfield figure I've enjoyed that much. So fun. I forget that actor's name. He's great.
Simon McBurney?
That is it indeed.
I did love that figure. I liked that it was like this deal with the devil type situation, which we often see in this kind of a setting where it's like, oh, I'm working for the bad guy because he has promised to share some of his power with me. Was Nosferatu going to do that? I don't know.
It seems by the end, apparently not. Or it just seems like the way he describes it is he was too obsessed with Ellen to like remember to make good on his deal. And then there is Mr. Prince of Rats left there to take the iron shot for his master. It's kind of tragic in a way.
He's like, yeah, I'm not going to turn you into a vampire, but if you could just like lie down in my coffin until my enemies get here. No reason. I'm going to be right back. Just wait here.
Just chill in the place that all the legends say I need to return to by sundown, and I'll get back to you sooner or later.
It's a shame.
It's kind of
Faustian
sad.
bargain indeed. You always get screwed over in the end.
Oh yeah, Solomonari, as they say.
But unlike a lot of Renfield figures who are kind of just made mentally unwell by Dracula's influence over them and don't seem to have a whole lot of control over what they're doing, he was like doing the things. He was like doing some arcane symbols and rites on the floor of like his home. I was like, I'm seeing pentagrams and salt, and I was like, okay.
The key of Solomon. And the further back you go in time, the more difficult it is to become the guy who's like alchemical, occult, making deals with devils successfully, because the amount of knowledge you need to acquire, the amount of esoteric knowledge beyond just being educated at all in society is just like, damn, Herr Knock, you're doing it. And I mean, probably because he was rich to begin with. That's the thing I've said before, is that like only rich people have the time to make up secret societies as they go about their day.
I would love to know who slid into whose DMs first. Did he delve into the dark arts and then discover Nosferatu's existence and go like, I'm gonna go find this Orlok man or write him some love letters? Or did Orlok, with his own sort of like telepathic powers, reach out and say, oh, here's someone I can use. Or even if there was like a larger group at some point in time that was like, oh, my disciples, my followers, my acolytes.
Yeah, I also wonder.
I would love to know.
Because they don't say it explicitly, but what they do say is that they do make clear that the Solomonari are an existing thing.
Yes.
That Count Orlok himself, when he was human back in the day, was a Solomonar.
Yes.
So it's the same order or type of enchanter or wizard or sorcerer or whatever. Maybe Herknock just had the tools because that knowledge was passed down. But yeah, it's very possible. Orlok's telepathic capability clearly is without bound because he can just kind of show up wherever
just
he needs
astral
to.
projecting
Make you
into
sleep.
your room, but also maybe physically interacting with matter at the same time. I was
Right.
like, huh?
Just like,
Stretches his shadow hand across this little German town and begins to spread the plague psychically.
spreads the plague psychically.
Eat your heart out, Sybil the Siren.
Terrifying.
What was it? You were like, Sybil was psychosomatically killing Enzo. Now, I've never seen someone psychosomatically spread the plague.
Yeah, the sirens are unfortunately not stepping to Orlok in this capacity. They have maybe found their match. Maybe Cade himself might be the other devil in question, might be an issue for him. Count Orlok, transformative. So much so that because I didn't know the cast going into this movie, I spent the first hour of a 2-hour movie under the impression that Orlok was being played by Willem Dafoe. And then Professor Ghostbuster shows up, and I'm like, hold on, dual role? Can this movie afford double Dafoe? That doesn't seem likely. But I was wrong. That was one of the Skaskas. It's the creepy one who played the clown, so good for him.
Bill, whose brother was in a series with another Bill vampire.
Eric Skarsgård?
Alexander.
No, Eric
Alexander
Northman's his
Skarsgård,
character's name.
playing Eric Northman.
Alexander
I also always
Skarsgård.
want to call him Eric.
I promise he's
because
my
of True Blood.
A brilliant performance, unrecognizable in body, face, voice.
Are you going to do the voice for us? I love when you do the voice.
I woke up in a strange way today. I really tried yesterday and I hit it, and today, hold on. As my solicitor. My favorite one is when he says solicitor proprietor. You have denied me 3 times hence. I love this performance. It's so good. What did you call him when we left the... No, not when we left. The scene where Tom realizes that he's been fed on, so then he starts running about in his castle and goes to finds his coffin in his room, opens it, and tries to hit him with the axe. And then Nosferatu grabs it, screams, throws it aside, and then stands up. And it's the first time you see a full body shot of him that's not in like darkness or cloaked in shadow with that enormous like fur coat that he wears. And he's like fully naked and just falling apart. And you say... What did you say?
Was it me or was it our friend who won't be named?
Either you or our friend said the most out of pocket shit.
Our friend was like, oh, uncut Romanian trade.
So wild. Again, attention to detail.
I was like, firstly, decidedly not trade. That is a white man who was quite rich. So, no.
Quite literally a man in finance. That is not trade. Oh, God.
But yeah, speaking of his physical form, we discussed it several times after seeing the movie. One of the worst forms of vampirism I've ever seen in terms of the body that you are now having to exist in for eternity.
It's not great.
I don't know if it's slowly been continuing to rot after the magic set in, or if the magic set in when he was already like quite decayed.
Whichever and whatever, it doesn't seem worth it to me.
He's
to
battling
persist.
for air. Every sentence he has, like, he has to stop like 3 times in the middle of each sentence to go.
Like, asthma stage 10, you're moving at a glacial pace. You look like that, not to body shame, but you're a literal corpse. I'm sorry.
Falling apart bony fingers. Just on this podcast, we're dealing with the Vampire Diaries, and by extension, we often discuss the more romance era vampires or the young millennial media vampires who are beautiful and sexy. It's like, become a vampire and you too can be a gorgeous person frozen in your late teens to early 20s for all eternity, looking the best that you ever have. Nosferatu takes it back. It's like, actually, there was a time when vampires were essentially zombies that drank blood instead of eating flesh.
Yep.
And you could tell.
As you've said before, a lot of overlap in some of the further back you go with these supernatural creatures, the werewolf of it, the vampire of it, the zombie of it, and the witch of it is like,
yes.
Sometimes these things would just blur together. And that is very cool and interesting. I have to say, Gaslight, Ancient Keep, marriage fraud, everything he does is funny as hell, objectively.
He starts off as a Solomonar, which I believe in Romanian folklore was a sort of wizard/warlock who was associated with like a dragon. Whether the dragon was like just a pet or a familiar, I'm not sure. Ooh. And could like control the weather, well, the bad aspects of the weather, which is much like Dracula in that way. Dracula can also control like, storm clouds and fog and rain. And his name literally means son of the dragon.
Wow.
So
Dovahkiin. Is that what Aragon's based on? Because I read the first Aragon book and that's basically the vibe. Well, at least the main character. He's like learning magic from this old dude, and then also he gets a dragon egg that becomes a dragon that he then is bonded with, and I think he rides it eventually. Maybe that guy.
I do believe he rides it. I don't remember if he had any magic. I watched Aragon like once years ago, so long ago that I didn't recognize Mr. Gold when I started watching Once Upon a Time.
Oh, I've not. I never saw the movie, so I didn't even know they were in
that.
He
plays the antagonist.
Oh, I don't remember who the antagonist was. I read this book 10 years ago for a friend.
I forget his name, but he's a shade, which is some sort of evil magic user.
Sick. That magic system, we won't get into it, but that magic system was far too extractive for my taste, but fair enough.
Speaking of like taking it back to its roots, vampirism as a thing that you, as a spellcaster, a malevolent magic user, are able to inflict on yourself to make sure that you come back from death, which is what Orlok is doing. The original Dracula novel doesn't really tell us how he got that way. He just is.
He's the natural. That is the thing that you feel sometimes, where it's like, oh, it almost seems like they're a naturalistic force. They're this inexorable thing of nature. And it's like, I like versions where it's like, oh, I made myself that way and then built the narrative around me so that I would seem impossible to defeat. That's my favorite shit. That's also very Lich-like, to bring it back to D&D 5e, is that like a sorcerer who persists through death and uses magic to transform themselves into this grotesque undead monster that can cast magic. And every time you kill them, they just go back to the phylactery that they have, and then they make a new body, and then they pop up again. It's really cool. But yeah, Friedrich, I on the rewatch, because when I watched it the first time, I was convinced that ATJ, I think I said his performance is limited by the fact that he's using half his energy to pitch down his voice. On rewatch, I'm not sure if that's true anymore, so now I'm doing a live focus test group. Y'all need to let me know. Do y'all think ATJ is pitching down his voice just a little bit for that role, or is it because of the dialect he's doing that I am now perceiving a depth to it that is, because you can listen to him in interviews, he has the sweetest little voice. I really love it. This is not to denigrate him. Zac Efron did a similar thing in The Greatest Showman, and I was like, it seems unnecessary. I think maybe just like focused on, because I think of the main cast, his character's the weakest for me, and I'm like, I know ATJ's a good actor, so this is unfortunate.
I could tell that his voice sounded lower than I was used to hearing it. I will say, though, with the exception of, what was that movie called? Is it Bullet Train? What was that thing he did with Phaistos?
Bullet Train.
With the exception of Bullet Train, I haven't watched anything that he's been in since like Age of Ultron. I guess I recently watched Kraven the Hunter for a kiki. It wasn't as bad as I hoped it would be, so therefore it wasn't as funny.
Even with all that ADR and the photo manipulation?
Now listen, the ADR was bad. Once again, a single character who's very ADR'd, but because it wasn't every single line, which was the bar that Madam Web had set for the character that had ADR there, it was, by that virtue, it was better.
Still so baffled by that. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, Friedrich is, as we said, the model man. He's rich, he's genteel, he's from proper society. He cannot stand that Ellen dares to, like, exist beyond the lines that he feels shouldn't be crossed, because Ellen doesn't stifle her emotions. She talks back when he's trying to chide her, and she's ill in a way that makes him uncomfortable, and that makes her improper, right? Which is the thing where I'm just like, all right, buddy.
She's hysterical.
Okay. So yeah, they literally, it's so funny. Just like, her hysterics have brought a blight upon my family. It's like, I need you dead, I think. And every time he's like, I cannot resist her when he's talking about his wife. I'm like, just let her have a break. She's got 2 kids that she's taking. Apparently it's her job to just bear your children without complaint, care for them, and then also remain like desirable and doting to this man who just wants one thing, it seems.
I mean, to me,
but then
it seems like they're very much in love and very much attracted to each other.
For sure.
And love their kids together. Also, he's pretty wealthy. I'm sure she's got some help in that household.
It is weird that I don't see a lot of like handmaidens. There's a lot of like butler men. There's that man who he tells to answer the door who doesn't for some reason, and then he has to answer it himself. So I'm like, what's the point of having help, I guess? But it doesn't seem there's handmaidens who are helping her, unless I'm forgetting.
I also don't remember seeing any. I don't know. They were just off screen. But usually a woman like that would have at least like one nanny in the house helping her. Unless she was like, no, I want to do it myself. These are my babies. Which would have, I guess, made her eccentric for the time. But it seems like I think they try to, that relationship, my interpretation of it was like, this is the proper way to experience, lust and desire and passion, within the confines of your very normal marriage. The woman is not acting out and being too aggressive.
Right.
The man is the more dominant force. He is the protector. He's always the one who is initiating everything, even if she is receptive to it and happy to do it.
Precisely.
Whereas that juxtaposition with Ellen, who's like seemingly somewhat sexually attracted to Nosferatu, even if she isn't fully aware of what exactly that entails. And I guess this is now an extramarital thing because she is married, even though it seems the psychic relationship began when she was like a child. So I thought that was...
But even with...
Yeah?
Just in general, even because they're not aware of the Nosferatu of it all to begin with, just her acting in a way that's suggestive or sexually desiring is just like out of pocket. It's just like, this is not the proper feminine purity we expect of you in this time. This is not the model womanhood. And then Anna is the one who must then mind Ellen in that respect, because she is always trying to tie Ellen's like eccentricities and her acting out as like, oh, she just misses her husband because that's the most important thing in her life. Oh, it's the power of God.
She doesn't have kids.
Because she doesn't have kids, so it's got to be God.
It's got to be her
man.
Find something. She's like, well, she's got no kids. It's her husband.
I love her, bless. She's a victim. But yeah, it's interesting. All the like gender stuff going on there is just very like... Whew.
Also, there's like a lot of chemistry between Anna and Ellen, which I was like, was this intentional?
When they're in the bed, she's like, thank you for loving me. I'm like, oh.
History will say that they were roommates. They loved each other as
sisters. Bosom pals. I'm like, girl, she might have been bisexual and we would never have known. Again, repression. But yeah, only when I've been calling him Professor Ghostbuster. I think it's von Franz or something like that. Willem Dafoe, when he finally
Professor not Van Helsing.
Exactly, not Van Helsing, Von Helsing. First person to speak to Ellen directly and ask her what's going on with her. Because to point, they're just like drugging her and tiring her up, and there's a bunch of men speaking to each other about what's going on with this girl. And he's like, my dear sweet Ellen, tell me, what have you been experiencing? Unheard of in medicine at the time.
They're like, oh my goodness, he's talking to the female patient?
That's not proper. And he sees her not as broken, but as experiencing something that they themselves can't comprehend. Obviously, because he's had all these studies about the esoteric and the alchemical that society laughed him away for. But it's like, there's something there about someone who has been quote unquote marginalized in some way, because at the end of the day he is still a white man with some wealth in society, but like his experience it seems, allows him to have a more tender hand with this sort of thing. At one point, he says in a past time, Ellen would have been called a priestess.
Yes.
And treated with all manner of respect. And I found that so beautiful, but also so sad.
He said, you might have been a priestess of Isis.
Yeah.
And I was like, in Egypt? Okay.
I don't know what she'd be doing there, but fair. Because it's like, we see this thing, and I mean, it's kind of iffy with like mental illness because this is real life after all. But within the context of the story, it's like we see this and we label it as hysteria, we label it as this improper behavior, and it's like there was a time where she would have been heralded above all because she was perceiving something beyond our existence. And it really speaks to just like the shift in dynamics. And I found that very...
In the context of a story where the supernatural is real, you will often see this thing where it's like, okay, in ancient pre-Abrahamic times and whatever setting you're in, whether that be Europe or Africa or whatever, before Christianity came along, it's like, oh, these visions and these connections to something else. It's like, oh, this thing to be celebrated, maybe feared, but understood to be of the divine. And then once you get like into the Christian era, it's like, okay, now it's literally demonized. This is demonic possession. This is not what we do. You cannot be supernatural unless you are God. This is wrong. And then more into the modern era of science, it's like, okay, now we just accept that these are mundane illnesses. It brings to mind in the Twilight novels, where I think it's in the first book, James is speaking to Bella about how he once hunted Alice because she was his, whatever it is that Bella is to Edward, the scent that is super intoxicating for him. And some old vampire dude turned Alice to save her. And he's just talking about, yeah, I knew her back when she was living in that asylum because of her premonitions that were being dubbed mental illness. And he's like, he points out that she's actually kind of lucky that this was happening to her in the early 19th century, because a century before, they probably would have just called her a witch and burned her at the stake.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no!
To be a woman.
Getting a raw deal in every era.
Listen, we're not the people to speak the most knowledgeably and confidently. Listen to women. Listen to women, please. 2025. But yeah, he's like, don't tie her down. Don't drug her. Sit with her and observe so we may learn. And he says this to Anna, the one other woman in the scenario, and is like, please sit with this girl, understand her. And I love that. And then my favorite line of his, because Siva is played by Ralph Ineson, whom I love, because he says, don't drug her. And he's like, but she will rave all the night. And he says, then rave she must. I just pictured Ellen rising up off that bed, disco sticks in hand. She's got the like glowing rings around her neck. She's got these heavy black shades.
I love that when he enters the situation. There's often that kind of a character in these stories, the one who is most knowledgeable about the supernatural in a setting where people are like, of course that's not real, that's all mythology and folklore. He comes in and is like, this is clearly something otherworldly, but admits that he's not sure what it is. He's like, maybe it's a ghost, or perhaps a demon. I'm not sure.
Who knows? We're just figuring out, man. Have you heard of differential diagnosis? I'm a better doctor than any of you losers.
And even once he figures out that it's a vampire, he's like, oh no, but there are different kinds of vampires. They're not all the same. And I'm like, interesting. So in this universe, Nosferatu is like one species.
At the very least, they are, again, because of this historical accuracy that Edges is usually focused on, they may very well be pulling from just historical texts and historical in our real world myths of vampirism and what people at the time considered people who were studied and learned, who were focused on the occult. It's cool stuff. I think I only had two other thoughts. One was the scene with the Romani community is maybe my favorite one in the whole movie. It's just a minute straight of the most fire performance you've seen on the side of the Carpathian Mountains, followed by them laughing at a white man clearly walking to his own death. Love it. I also really love the imagery of that march that they do that evening to Orlok's grave, where that guy stabs him with the cold iron through his corpse.
It's not Orlok's grave. It's some other lesser vampire who I guess.
Oh, it's a different vampire.
Yeah,
that makes so much more sense, because I was like, were they trying to kill Orlok and then they failed and then he wiped them out and that's why they're not there that morning? I was very confused by that scene.
I think it's supposed to be some progeny of Orlok. I guess they killed it and then decided, let's leave before
we're good
before he shows up and retaliates.
We're not trying to deal with the big one. We don't want that smoke. And I love that because we're about to talk about sinners in a minute, but I love that they're like, we see what's happening in this moment. We're out.
Also, when we had watched the film, one of our friends like had some concerns about the Romani representation. They were like, is that whole like march into the forest thing just like more sensationalization of like Romani people and their customs and making like all this mysticism attached to them? And I was like, as far as I know, given the research that I briefly did, that is a custom from that part of the world to be led to a vampire's resting place or to the grave of someone who's about to become a vampire by a virgin. Because virgin magic, which exists in a lot of
virgin
cultures.
magic exists across cultures. It is it's like bread, how we all independently figured out bread and then also figured out how to fry it. We all came to the conclusion that virgins are the most magical thing. And we either heralded them or we sacrificed them. It's kind of
Which again is interesting in this film, where like the sexuality is like a big undertone and overtone of the plot.
Well, to that point, like I was truly just like the feeding. When we talk about this in the Vampire Diaries, because it comes up often, the like feeding aspect being this sensual, almost sexual thing. I was like, even with Thomas seems to be having not quite at the same level but a similar response to it that Ellen is having to the dreams or to the fits that she's having, and I'm like, this could be a freaky throw. I don't see the issue.
It's so,
that was a thought.
In Thomas's case, it's so like aggressive and violent in a way that he doesn't entirely seem to be like, oh, I wasn't, because like with Ellen, it's like, oh, we've had this psychic connection that maybe I kind of want or possibly enjoyed or was groomed to be into. But with Thomas, it's just like, no, he just wakes up and this vampire is sitting on his body, biting into his chest, drinking with the noisiest gulps I've ever heard a vampire take. And I will say,
vocal
points to Orlok for being the one vampire who doesn't just waste blood and let most of it like dribble out of his mouth.
We know
he was like, no, I'm
that.
latching on and I'm going
straddling that man, arching his old necrotic back, just really putting his whole Orlok into it. Good for him. But yeah, the only other thing, the last thing I thought of, and this is spoilers for Midnight Mass, which is a great television series you should watch, listener. It's part of the Flaniverse, the Mike Flanagan universe of projects. Fadzai, you've seen Midnight Mass, I'm pretty sure.
I know what you're about to say. Take it away.
The climax of this movie, the way that they defeat Nosferatu, half of it is very similar to how it happens in Midnight Mass. Obviously, Ellen has to sacrifice herself because she knows the Nosferatu is obsessed with her and wants her. She must willingly give in for this compact to be made, so she invites him into her home and then allows him to drink from her fully, and she would then die in the process, but she would hold him long enough for the sun to rise while he was so consumed by it, and then burn in the sun. And I did have a think about this, and I was like, well, how is this the only way? And it's like, well, yeah, if anyone else tried to like keep him out of his grave until the sun rose, he'd just use his all-powerful vampire magic to destroy them. Like, truly, Ellen was the only one who could do it. And in a way, it's sad because it's like, well, she does still have to be served up to this vampire, but there is a focus on the like agency of it, I suppose, and the heroics of it. But I think it is intentionally still a bit like, well, at the end of the day, she had to die to redeem all these men. And it doesn't feel super great. Like von Franz throws these lavenders on her bed because that was her flower, and it's like, I mean, that's to honor her, sure, but there you are standing looking out the window holding her cat that you're just gonna take. Doesn't feel great. Anyway, very similar to Midnight Mass, where Aaron Green, one of the main characters, becomes the lead character beyond a certain point because good old Riley makes that heroic sacrifice in episode 5. But she gets knocked out by the vampire, or the angel as they call it in that show, because vampires don't exist in that world. And it is feeding off her, very similarly, like at the neck or at the breast, as you might say. And she pulls out a switchblade and starts cutting holes in the vampire's wings, because this is a flying vampire. As it starts to pull away from her, she grabs its head and and pulls it closer to her neck and is like, no, drink a little bit more, babe. Have some more. Have seconds. And like coaxes it into being consumed into this meal so it doesn't notice she's like chopping up its wings so it can't fly away by the time the sun rises. And I thought that was lovely.
Dumbass vampire. A very feral vampire, that one. That it didn't see that trick coming.
Animalistic, yeah.
What I notice, how I interpret the slight difference in the relationship between vampire and prey in those two scenes is that in Ellen's case, it's very much like, oh, she must lay with this vampire in a very sexual way in order to trap him there long enough to be killed by the sun. Whereas in Midnight Mass, it's a very motherly sort of thing that she does, like pulling it closer to feed off of her. She is also the character who lost her baby during the course of the story. Wow. So I just thought that was interesting, where it's like, it's a pity that these women characters have to sacrifice themselves, and in very like ways that are very...
You're either a bride or a mother, right?
You either kill the vampire by being its mommy or being its wife. But at least I will say in Midnight Mass, the body count is quite high. And as you said, Riley has to sacrifice himself already just to convince her that everything is real. Because he's like, she's not going to believe me. This sounds crazy. I have to burn to death in front of her at sunrise so she knows I'm being serious.
Yeah, the thing I appreciate about that show is that pretty much everyone dies by the end except the baby Adam and Eve to take forth their new society. So there's no sense of like, well, I mean, not to suggest there would never be, but there really is no sense in that show that like there's a gendered aspect to any death. So that's interesting.
And also interesting that the way in which Orlok dies by sunlight, he doesn't really burn. He just sort of gets hit with the blaze of the sun and then like just leaks blood until he dies.
Well, it doesn't burn his body, right? It burns his immortal soul out of his form.
There we go.
And then he collapses.
There we go. I just thought it was funny given that the original Nosferatu is the first vampire to have like burned in the sun in fiction. And they were like, we're going to pull the rug out from under you. He's not going to burn.
We're reinventing. It's a new day. It's almost 100 years later.
And then we just get that very awful scene of his like dead body lying on top of hers, looking gross as ever in this pool of her blood and his mixed together. And I'm like, oh no. Can we burn this house to the ground and never speak of this again?
Oh, God. I liked it on second watch. I liked it a touch better on second watch, for sure. I do still think some bits are like, oh, like I said, ATJ's character is just like, I don't like the character themselves, but you're not meant to in some points in the movie, so that's intentional, but also his performance for me was like the weakest. Lily-Rose, I think, was doing the thing, and so I can't hold nothing against her if it wasn't always the best performance. Pretty much everyone else was killing it. So
you love HERR.
HERR, my king.
HERR managing to be the campiest character in this film, where Lily is doing a lot and Mr. Willem Dafoe is also doing a lot.
Willem Dafoe's physical comedy in a scene that is not comedic, where he's just like pulling things out of his pockets, he's stabbing her through the arm, and the shot is like moving to capture his dynamism. Love it. Still HERR succeeds. Still HERR rises above. Miss Depp doing the, is this the thanks that I get for putting you pictures on?
Actually.
You got nothing on my man Canuck still, even with that diva. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's me on Nosferatu. I don't know if you have any other thoughts.
No, that's all. We can move on to the one that we do love more. Ooh. Sorry to say. I mean, I love Nosferatu, but this film.
Spin-off episode ends. Email us at animalattackpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at animattackpod. That's at ANIM attackpod. Cheers.